The salvage scanner beeped 3 times, which meant something valuable was buried in the sand below. David Reed adjusted his ship's altitude and circled the crash site one more time. The Scorched Reach was not a planet where honest people did business. Slavers, smugglers, and worse called this desert world home. He should have ignored the signal and moved on to safer hunting grounds. But 3 beeps meant tech worth selling, and David needed the credits. He landed the Wanderer 50 meters from the wreckage. Sand whipped against his boots as he stepped outside, the twin suns making everything shimmer with heat. The crashed vessel was half buried, its hull cracked open like an egg. Syndicate markings covered the side. David's stomach tightened. The Syndicate did not forgive people who touched their property that he almost turned back. Almost. The cargo bay door hung open, swinging in the wind. David climbed through, his flashlight cutting through the darkness inside. The smell hit him first. Unwashed bodies, fear, and something else he could not name. His light swept across the space and found them. Prisoners. At least a dozen beings chained to the walls with strange restraints that glowed dull orange. The chains looked like compressed sand, crystallized into something harder than metal. David had heard about these. Suppression chains. They drained strength and made escape impossible. That a small human girl sat in the corner, maybe 12 years old. Her face was streaked with tears. Next to her, a thin blue alien slumped unconscious against the wall. But David's eyes locked on the figure in the center of the cargo bay. She was massive, nearly 7 feet tall, even while sitting. Her body was covered in scales that shifted between bronze and deep purple, depending on how the light hit them. Wings sprouted from her back, bound tightly with triple layers of the sand chains. Her face was humanoid but sharper, more angular, with eyes that glowed faint gold even in her weakened state, that a Draken. David had never seen one in person. They were warriors, legends in the outer systems. Dangerous and proud. The dragon woman's eyes opened and fixed on him. Her voice came out rough, like gravel scraping metal. Leave now, human, before they return. David should have listened. Every survival instinct screamed at him to run. Instead, he knelt beside the small girl. Are you okay? The child grabbed his arm with both hands. Please help us. They're coming back soon. They're going to sell us at the market. David looked at the faces around him. Young, old, different species. All terrified. He thought about walking away. He had walked away from hard choices before. That was how he survived. The Syndicate will kill you if you interfere, the dragon woman said. Her voice was weaker now. I am warning you for your own sake. Yeah, I figured. David pulled out his plasma torch and ignited it. The blue flame reflected in the dragon woman's eyes. How do these chains work? You are a fool. Not the first time someone said that. He moved to the nearest prisoner, the thin blue alien. The torch cut through the sand chains slowly. They resisted, seeming to absorb some of the heat. But eventually they cracked and fell away. The alien gasped and slumped forward. David caught him and lowered him gently to the floor point one by one. He freed them. The small girl, an elderly merchant. 2 others he did not recognize. They stumbled toward the exit, weak but moving. David finally approached the dragon woman. You should save your energy for the others, she said. I am too weak to walk anyway. The chains have been on me for many days. Then I'll carry you. She laughed, a bitter sound. I weigh 3 times what you do, human. We'll figure it out. David started cutting the chains around her wings first. The torch heated up dangerously, nearly overloading. The sand chains on a Draken were stronger, designed to hold a warrior. Sweat poured down his face from the heat and effort. Why are you doing this? She asked quietly. Does it matter? Yes. David paused and met her eyes. Because walking away would make me someone I don't want to be. The chains around her wings shattered. She gasped as they fell away, stretching the cramped muscles. David moved to her wrists next. The torch flickered, its power cell nearly drained. What is your name? She asked. David. I am Ashira of the Skyfire clan. Her voice grew stronger as more chains fell away. You have made a dangerous enemy today, David. The Syndicate does not forget. Join the club. The last chain broke. Ashira tried to stand and nearly fell. David caught her arm, barely keeping her upright. She was right about the weight. His legs shook from the effort. "I can walk," she insisted, but her steps were unsteady. They made it to the cargo bay door together. The other freed prisoners were already climbing into the Wanderer. David helped Ashira across the sand toward his ship. That was when the engines roared overhead. Three Syndicate patrol ships dropped from the sky, kicking up massive sand clouds. Searchlights swept across the ground, locking onto David and Ashira. "Get to your ship." Ashira shoved him forward with surprising force. "Go now." David grabbed her hand and pulled her with him. They ran together, stumbling through the sand as plasma fire scorched the ground around them. The Wanderer's ramp was down. The little girl leaned out, waving frantically. "Come on, hurry." David and Ashira threw themselves through the doorway. He slammed the ramp control and sprinted for the cockpit. The engines were already warming up. Through the view screen, he saw the patrol ships moving into attack formation. Ashira collapsed in the co-pilot's seat, breathing hard. She turned to look at him, her golden eyes intense. "You just made the biggest mistake of your life, human." David pushed the throttle forward. The Wanderer lifted off as plasma bolts exploded around them. "Story of my life," he muttered, and pushed the ship toward the stars. Space debris filled the view screen as David pushed the Wanderer through the asteroid field. Behind them, three Syndicate ships matched every turn. Plasma fire lit up the darkness, missing by meters. "Your ship is slow," Ashira said from the co-pilot's seat. She still looked weak, her scales dull instead of shining. "It's a salvage vessel, not a fighter." David rolled hard to starboard, using a spinning asteroid for cover. "Got any helpful suggestions?" "Do not get hit." Despite everything, David almost smiled. The little girl, Mira, crouched behind his seat and held on tight. The other freed prisoners were strapped into the cargo bay. David checked his scanner. The Syndicate ships were spreading out, trying to box him in. "They will not stop," Ashira said. Her breathing was still labored. "The Syndicate never forgives property loss." "You're not property. Tell them that." David yanked the controls left, diving under a cluster of rocks. One Syndicate ship tried to follow and scraped its hull against an asteroid. It fell back, venting atmosphere. Two ships left. "How long until you're back to full strength?" David asked. Ashira flexed her clawed hands. The sand chains had left marks on her scales. "Days. Maybe a week. The suppressant poison needs to clear from my system." "We don't have days." David checked his fuel levels. Half empty. The weapons system blinked red. He had one mining laser meant for cutting salvage, not fighting warships. "There's a dead system 3 jumps from here. Dying star, nothing valuable. Maybe we can lose them there. Or die there." Ashira looked at him with those gold eyes. "Why did you free me, David? Tell me the truth." He focused on flying, weaving between rocks. "Does it matter now?" "Yes. I need to understand what kind of human risks his life for strangers." David was quiet for a moment. A plasma bolt passed close enough to shake the ship. Mira whimpered behind him. "I lost people once," he finally said. "My whole colony. The corporation that owned our settlement pulled out when the mines ran dry. They left us stranded with no ships, no supplies. I watched everyone I knew die slow. Starvation, disease, cold. I was one of the lucky ones who got off planet on a transport that finally came. Since then, I've been alone. Figured that was safer. Then why help us? Because watching doesn't make you innocent. It makes you complicit." He glanced at her. "I'm tired of watching." Ashira studied him with an expression he could not read. Before she could respond, the ship's computer screamed a warning. The 2 remaining Syndicate vessels had coordinated their attack. They came at the Wanderer from opposite sides, plasma cannons charging. David had nowhere to go. "Hold on." He killed the engines completely, letting momentum carry them forward. The Wanderer went dark and silent. The Syndicate ships fired at the same instant. Their plasma bolts crossed paths exactly where the Wanderer would have been if David had kept accelerating. Instead, the bolts slammed into each other's ships. One Syndicate vessel exploded immediately. The other spun away, its port side torn open, leaking debris and bodies into space. David restarted the engines. The Wanderer coughed back to life and jumped away before the damaged ship could recover. That was insane, Ashira said. That was lucky. David set the navigation computer for the dead system. They'll call for reinforcements. We've got maybe an hour before more ships arrive. Ashira unbuckled and stood slowly. She was still unsteady, but stronger than before. I need to speak with you about something important. Can it wait? I'm kind of busy not dying. No. She moved behind his chair, and David felt the weight of her presence. Draken were not just tall. They radiated power, even when weakened. In my culture, when someone saves your life, a debt is created. A life debt is sacred and absolute. I don't want anything from you. That is not how it works. Ashira's voice grew frustrated. I must repay what you have done. It is a matter of honor. Then consider it repaid. You're alive. We're escaping together. We're even. We are not even. The frustration turned to anger. You do not understand. Among my people, a life debt unpaid is shame. It is worse than death. I cannot simply walk away from this obligation. David sighed. Look, I didn't free you expecting payment. I did it because it was right. That's all. How can you be so foolish? Ashira's claws scraped the back of his chair. You should demand something. Protection, credits, political favor. Anything. But instead you act as though you did nothing important. Maybe it wasn't important. Maybe I'm just tired of being the guy who walks away. Before Ashira could argue more, Mira spoke up quietly. I think he's nice. They both looked at the girl. She smiled shyly. My parents always said the best people don't expect rewards for being good. They just are. Ashira's expression softened. She knelt beside Mira, bringing her massive scaled face level with the child's. You are wise for one so young. What is your name? Mira. And where is your family, Mira? The girl's smile faded. Gone. The syndicate raided our colony 6 months ago. They took all the children. I don't know where anyone else is. Ashira's eyes hardened. She looked at David. More innocents stolen. Does your species not hunt down these slavers? Some try, David said bitterly. Most look the other way. Syndicate has credits, and credits by silence. On my world, slavers are executed on sight. Must be nice having a world that cares. David focused on the navigation computer. 2 more jumps to the dead system. Look, we can argue about debts and honor later. Right now, we need to survive the next few hours. Ashira stood slowly. She placed one clawed hand on his shoulder. The touch was surprisingly gentle. You are wrong about something, David. What you did was important. And I will make sure you understand that before this is over. She moved back to the cargo bay to check on the other freed prisoners. Mira stayed behind David's chair. She likes you, the girl whispered. She wants to repay a debt. That's different. If you say so. David did not answer. The Wanderer jumped into hyperspace, leaving the asteroids and the syndicate behind. For now, 3 weeks in hyperspace changed everything. David had dropped the other freed prisoners at a safe colony station after the first week. They thanked him with tears and promises he knew they could not keep. Only Mira and Ashira remained aboard the Wanderer. The girl had nowhere to go. Ashira insisted she needed to reach her homeworld, Draken Prime, and David had agreed to take her. He told himself it was just practical. The syndicate would hunt them anyway. Might as well finish the job. But that was a lie, and he knew it. The ship felt different now. Less empty. Mira had claimed the small storage room as her own, decorating it with salvaged items David pretended not to notice her taking. She followed him around like a shadow, asking endless questions about how the ship worked. David found himself teaching her basic repairs, showing her how to read the navigation computer, explaining why certain systems needed daily maintenance. It gave her something to focus on besides the trauma. It gave him a purpose beyond just surviving. Ashira was harder to understand. As the suppressant poison left her system, her strength returned. Her scales brightened to their full bronze and purple glory. Her movements became fluid and precise instead of weak and stumbling. She helped with repairs around the ship, her claws surprisingly delicate when working with small components, but she watched David constantly, studying him, trying to figure him out. On the 18th day, the food recycler broke down. David was shoulder deep in the machine, cursing at corroded wiring, when Ashira appeared beside him. "Let me." She reached past him with one clawed hand and pulled out the damaged circuit board. Her talons peeled away the corrosion with surgical precision. "This connection is weak. You have spare components." Bottom drawer, left side. She found the parts and began reassembling the circuit. David watched her work, impressed despite himself. "Where did you learn ship repair?" "All Skyfire clan warriors train in multiple disciplines. We cannot rely only on strength." She inserted the new circuit and powered it on. The recycler hummed to life. "My people value adaptability." Sounds familiar. Humans have a saying, "Jack of all trades, master of none." But better than master of one. Ashira smiled, showing sharp teeth. "We have the same saying in my language." David found himself smiling back. "Maybe we're not so different." "Perhaps not." She closed the recycler panel. "I've been meaning to ask you something. Why do you live alone out here? Humans are social creatures. You should have a crew, a community." The smile faded from David's face. He turned back to his tools, organizing them with unnecessary focus. "Told you already. I lost my people. Easier to work alone." Easier is not the same as better. It's safer. For whom? Ashira sat down on a cargo crate, her wings folding behind her. "I think you are afraid, David. Not of danger or death. You are afraid of caring about someone and losing them again. That's not your business. You made it my business when you freed me." Her voice was gentle but firm. "I have been watching you with Mira. You teach her, protect her, care for her. But you never let her call you anything but David. You maintain distance even while growing close." "What?" David's hand stopped moving. He stared at the tools without seeing them. "Because she'll leave eventually. Everyone does. And if I let myself care too much, it'll hurt worse when she's gone. So you choose to hurt now, a little bit every day, rather than risk a larger pain later? When you say it like that, it sounds stupid. Because it is." Ashira stood and moved closer. "I lost my clutch mate 5 years ago. She was my closest companion since childhood. We fought together, trained together, dreamed together. When she died in battle, I thought the pain would destroy me. I'm sorry. Do not be. The pain was worth it. Every moment with her was worth the grief that came after." Ashira's golden eyes held his. "You humans have such short lives, and you waste so much of that precious time protecting yourselves from connection. It's tragic." Before David could respond, Myra's voice called from the cockpit. "David, the scanner is showing something weird." They both rushed forward. Mira pointed at the display screen. A massive energy signature appeared ahead, growing stronger. "We're still 2 days from Draken Prime," David said, checking the coordinates. "Nothing should be out here. That energy pattern." Ashira leaned closer to the screen. "I know it. Syndicate command carrier. They found us." David's blood went cold. "Ow!" "We jumped 3 times, changed vectors, stayed away from shipping lanes." Ashira's expression darkened. "There must be a tracker. Check Mira." "What?" "No. I already scanned her after we escaped. The beacon was in her clothes. We destroyed it. Check again. Syndicate trackers can be hidden in many ways." Mira looked terrified. "I don't want to go back. Please don't let them take me." David knelt beside her. "We won't. I promise." He pulled out his medical scanner and ran it over her slowly. At first, nothing appeared. Then, faint but present, a signal pinged. Inside her left arm, just under the skin. "They implanted you," David whispered. "Those bastards implanted you." Tears ran down Myra's face. "Can you get out?" David looked at Ashira. She nodded slowly. "I can do it," Ashira said. "But we need to do it now, and it will hurt." "I don't care." Myra's voice was stronger than David expected. "Just get out." 20 minutes later, Mira sat in the medical bay with her arm bandaged. The tracker, a device no bigger than a grain of rice, sat in a container on the table. Ashira had removed it with steady hands while David held Mira and talked to her about constellations and star formations, anything to distract from the pain. "We need to destroy it," David said. "No." Ashira picked up the container. "We use it. I have an idea, but it requires trusting me completely. And it requires us to fly directly toward that command carrier." David stared at her. "You want to fly toward the ship hunting us?" "Yes." "That's insane. That is also our only chance. Ashira's expression was fierce. I'm nearly at full strength now. If you can get me close enough to that carrier, close enough to absorb energy from its reactor, I can end this threat. Permanently. You're talking about absorbing a capital ship's worth of power. That could kill you. Better than running forever. Ashira met his eyes. Do you trust me, David? You should have said no. Should have found another way. But looking at her determined face, at Myra's hopeful expression, David realized something had changed. He was not alone anymore. And maybe that was worth the risk. Yeah, he said quietly. I trust you. Ashira smiled. Then let us show the Syndicate what happens when they hunt a Draken warrior and her human friend. David turned the ship toward the approaching command carrier. His hands were steady on the controls. The Syndicate command carrier burned behind them, split in half and venting atmosphere into the void. Ashira had done exactly what she promised. David flew close enough for her to reach the reactor core through an external maintenance port. She absorbed so much energy that her scales glowed white-hot for 10 full minutes. When she finally released that power, the directed plasma burst cut through the carrier's hull like paper. Now, 5 days later, they approached Draken Prime. The planet appeared on a view screen, and David understood why the Draken were warriors. Their world looked like it was still being born. Active volcanoes dotted the surface, their glow visible from space. Mountain ranges stretched across continents, peaks so high they pierced the cloud layer. Cities clung to cliff sides built into the rock itself. It's beautiful, Mira whispered. It is home, Ashira said softly. Then her expression shifted. David, I need to warn you. My people are not always welcoming to outsiders, especially humans. Because we have a reputation, because your kind has broken many treaties and caused much suffering in the outer systems. The Draken remember everything. We forget nothing. David's jaw tightened. I can't change what other humans have done. I know, but my people will judge you anyway. Ashira placed a hand on his shoulder. I will speak for you. My word carries weight in the Skyfire clan, but you must be prepared for hostility. 3 patrol ships surrounded the Wanderer within minutes of entering orbit. Sleek vessels painted in reds and golds, each bristling with weapons. A harsh voice came through the communication system, speaking in a language David did not understand. Ashira responded in the same tongue, her voice commanding. The patrol ships escorted them to a landing platform carved into a mountainside. As the Wanderer touched down, David saw dozens of Draken watching from elevated positions. All of them were armed. Stay close, Ashira said. Let me do the talking. They descended the ramp together, Mira holding David's hand. The heat hit immediately. Gravity pulled harder than Earth's standard, making each step require more effort. The air smelled of sulfur and hot stone that a group of Draken elders waited at the platform's edge. The largest, a male with silver scales and scars covering half his face, stepped forward. He and Ashira spoke rapidly, their conversation too fast for David to follow even if he understood the language. But he understood the tone. The scarred elder kept glancing at David with obvious disgust. Ashira's voice grew sharper, more insistent. The argument lasted several minutes before the elder finally gestured toward a large building carved into the cliff face. The council wishes to see you, Ashira told David. Her expression was tight. This is not going well. The council chamber was vast, with a ceiling that disappeared into shadow. 12 elders sat on stone platforms arranged in a semicircle. The scarred elder took the center position, his gold eyes fixed on David with open contempt. I am Gryver, first elder of the council, he said in accented but clear galactic common. Ashira of the Skyfire clan claims you freed her from syndicate chains. She claims you destroyed a command carrier to protect her. She claims you seek nothing in return for these actions. That's true, David said. Lies. Gryver's voice was flat. Humans do nothing without expecting profit. You seek political favor, trade advantages, perhaps military intelligence about Draken defenses. You will not have any of it. I don't want any of it. Then you are either a liar or a fool. Gryver stood, his full height making David feel tiny. The Draken have dealt with your species before. You are thieves and cowards who prey on the weak and abandon your own when convenient. You break treaties when they no longer benefit you. You exploit and destroy without thought for consequences. David's hands clenched into fists. I'm not responsible for what other humans have done, but you benefit from it nonetheless. You travel freely through space on ships built with stolen technology. You trade with markets created by exploitation. You claim innocence while your entire civilization stands on the backs of others. That's not fair. Fair. Gryver's laugh was bitter. Ashira tells me your colony was abandoned by your own kind, that you watch your people die because no one cared enough to save them. And yet you defend humanity. I'm not defending all of humanity. I'm just saying you can't judge me based on what others have done. Why not? You judge yourself that way. Gryver's eyes narrowed. Ashira says you live alone because you believe you failed your colony. You carry guilt for deaths you could not prevent. You isolate yourself because you think you deserve loneliness. If you judge yourself so harshly, why should we judge you any differently? The words hit harder than any physical blow. David had no response. Mira stepped forward suddenly. Her small voice carried in the vast chamber. You're wrong about him. Every elder turned to look at her. Gryver's expression softened slightly. Child, this does not concern you. Yes, it does. David saved me when he didn't have to. He could have left me in those chains. He could have abandoned me at any station. But he didn't. He taught me about ships and stars. He makes sure I eat before he does. He has nightmares about the people he couldn't save, and he still saves people anyway. Tears ran down her face now, but her voice stayed steady. You say humans are bad. Maybe lots of them are, but David isn't. And if you can't see that, then you're the ones who are blind. The chamber fell silent. Gryver studied Mira for a long moment, then looked at Ashira. You vouch for this human. With my life and honor, Ashira said immediately. And you believe he seeks no profit from helping you. I believe he is trying to learn how to be part of something larger than himself again. He has been alone too long. He has forgotten what it means to belong to a community. Gryver sat back down slowly. The council will debate this matter, but I propose a test. David of the humans will live among us for 3 days. He will endure our world's conditions, learn our ways, prove his character through actions rather than words. If he survives and still asks for nothing, we will acknowledge his deed. If he reveals his true nature as a scavenger seeking profit, he will be exiled from Draken Prime forever. David looked at Ashira. She nodded encouragement. I accept, David said. Then it begins tomorrow. Gryver's scarred face showed no emotion. Pray your human weakness does not fail you, David. Our world does not forgive the frail. That night, David stood on a balcony overlooking the city. Mira slept inside, exhausted. Ashira joined him in the darkness. I did not expect Gryver to be so harsh, she said quietly. He's not wrong, though. About humans, about me. We are pretty messed up. Every species is flawed. The Draken were slaves once, thousands of years ago. We remember that pain, and it makes us suspicious of others. How did you break free? We chose to stand together despite our differences. We chose to believe freedom was possible even when it seemed impossible. She looked at him. Much like you chose to free me despite the danger. David smiled tiredly. 3 days. Think I'll survive. I think you will surprise them. You have already surprised me. How? Ashira's golden eyes reflected the volcanic glow from distant peaks. You made me believe that some humans can be trusted. That is no small thing. The first day nearly killed him. David stood in the training grounds as the twin suns reached their peak. The temperature was already unbearable, and young Draken warriors moved through combat drills around him. A trainer, a female with crimson scales, pointed at a pile of stones. Move those to the other side of the yard. David looked at the stones. Each one was easily twice his weight. There were at least 50 of them. The warriors watched him, their expressions ranging from curiosity to contempt. He lifted the first stone and immediately felt his muscles strain. The higher gravity made everything worse. But he carried it across the yard, step by painful step, then went back for another. And another by the 20th stone, his hands were bleeding. By the 30th, His legs shook with every step. The warriors had stopped their own training to watch. Some looked impressed. Most looked like they were waiting for him to quit. David did not quit. He moved all 50 stones, one at a time, even though it took 6 hours and left him barely able to stand. When he finally dropped the last stone in place, several warriors tapped their claws against their chests. A sign of respect. He learned later. The trainer approached him. "You are weak, but you are stubborn. That is worth something." David just nodded, too exhausted to speak. The second day was different. They took him to a memorial site high in the mountains. Ancient stone carvings cover the walls, depicting Draken in chains, Draken rising up, Draken breaking free. An old male with white scales explained the history. "We were slaves for 3,000 years, bred to fight in wars not our own, treated as property, not people. We remember every moment of that suffering." David listened to stories of rebellion, sacrifice, and eventual freedom. The old male's voice cracked when describing the final battle that won their independence. "Why you tell me this?" David asked. "Because you must understand why we do not trust easily. We know what it means to be property. We know what it means when others see you as less than themselves." The old male's eyes fixed on him. "Ashira says you freed her from chains. Why?" David thought about his answer carefully. "Because I know what it's like to be abandoned, to be treated as disposable. My whole colony was left to die because we were not profitable anymore. I can't change what happened to me, but I could change what happened to her." The old male was quiet for a long time. Finally, he tapped his chest twice. "You understand more than I expected, human." That evening, David returned to his small quarters to find Mira waiting with Ashira. "How are you holding up?" Ashira asked. "Everything hurts." David sat down carefully. "But I'll make it through tomorrow." "The third day is always the hardest," Ashira warned. "Be ready for anything." The third day began with alarms blaring across the city. David ran outside to find Draken rushing in every direction. Ashira grabbed his arm. "Thermal storm. Major 1. Everyone must help secure the structures and rescue anyone trapped in exposed areas." David followed her into organized chaos. The storm appeared on the horizon, a massive wall of superheated air and ash. Draken work crews secured buildings, reinforced walls, and moved vulnerable civilians to sheltered locations. "What do you need me to do?" David shouted over the rising wind. "Stay with me. Help where you can." They worked for hours as the storm approached. David carried supplies, helped board up windows, assisted elderly Draken to safety shelters. His small size became an advantage when crawling through narrow spaces that larger Draken could not navigate. Then came the cry for help. A young Draken child, no more than 5 years old, was trapped in a collapsed storage building. The entrance was blocked by fallen beams too heavy for David, but too narrow for adult Draken to fit through. "I can get to her," David said immediately. "The storm will hit in minutes," a warrior protested. "You will die in there." "Then I'll die trying." David dropped to his stomach and crawled through the gap between beams. The space was tight, scraping his back and shoulders. He heard the child crying deeper inside. He found her pinned under a shelf, scared but not seriously hurt. David lifted the shelf just enough for her to crawl free, then guided her back toward the entrance. The storm's edge hit just as they reached the gap. Heat washed over them, making it hard to breathe. Draken hands reached through the opening, pulling the child to safety. Then pulling David through as burning ash began to fall. They dragged him into a reinforced shelter just as the full storm arrived. Through the thick windows, David watched the world outside turn into an inferno. The child's parents held their daughter and thanked David with tears in their eyes. Around the shelter, Draken, who had watched him with suspicion, now looked at him differently. That night, after the storm passed, the entire community gathered for a traditional storm feast. David found himself seated at the center table, surrounded by Draken who asked him questions about human culture, about his life, about his journey with Ashira. Gryver stood and the crowd fell silent. The scarred elder looked at David with an expression that was no longer hostile. 3 days ago, I called you a liar or a fool. I was wrong. You have proven your character through actions. You endured our trials without complaint. You honored our history with respect. You risked your life for one of our children when you could have stayed safe. Gryver's voice carried across the crowd. The council acknowledges that you are neither liar nor fool. You are simply someone who chooses to do right despite the cost. The Draken around David tapped their claws against their chests. The sound filled the hall. Ashira stood next. David freed me from chains, but he also freed me from believing all humans were selfish. He showed me that courage is not about strength or size. It is about choosing to stand when you could run, to help when you could ignore, to care when you could stay distant. She looked directly at him. The council offers you sanctuary on Draken Prime. A home, if you wish it. You have earned a place among us. David sat frozen. A home. The word felt foreign after so many years alone. He looked around at the faces watching him. At Mira, who smiled encouragingly. At Ashira, whose golden eyes held something he could not name. I don't know if I remember how to be part of a community, he said honestly. Gryver's scarred face showed something that might have been a smile. Then you will learn. We will teach you, as you have taught us, that humans can surprise even the most skeptical among us. David felt something crack inside his chest. The armor he had built around himself after losing his colony. The walls he had maintained for so long. They did not crumble all at once, but there were cracks now. Light getting through. I'll stay, he said quietly. For a while at least. See if I can figure out how to do this. Ashira's expression was radiant. That is all anyone can ask. 2 months changed everything David thought he knew about himself. That he established a small workspace near the landing platforms, helping maintain ships and teaching young Draken about human technology. Mira thrived, adopted officially into Ashira's clan and learning both human and Draken ways. She laughed more now. The shadows in her eyes were fading. David worked alongside Ashira almost every day. She became his bridge to Draken culture, teaching him their language and customs. But somewhere along the way, their partnership became something else. Something neither of them had words for. Draken did not love the way humans did. Their bonds were different, built on shared purpose and absolute loyalty rather than romance. But when Ashira looked at him, David felt something shift in his chest. When they worked side by side, when they argued about repair techniques or shared quiet moments watching the sunset over volcanic peaks, he felt less alone than he had in years. He was afraid to name it, afraid to risk losing it. You're doing it again, Ashira said one evening as they sat on a cliff overlooking the city. Doing what? Protecting yourself, keeping distance even while growing closer. Her golden eyes studied him. You care for Mira like a father, but you will not let her call you that. You work with me daily, share your thoughts and fears, yet you hold part of yourself back. Why? David watched the twin moons rise over distant mountains. Because caring makes you vulnerable. I learned that lesson hard, and yet you freed me from chains. You risked everything for strangers. That requires caring deeply. That was different. How? Ashira's voice was gentle but insistent. You keep saying you do not want attachments, yet you form them anyway. You claim to prefer solitude, yet you chose to stay here among my people. Your actions and your words do not match, David. Maybe I don't know what I want, or maybe you are afraid of admitting what you already know. She stood and spread her wings, catching the warm thermal updrafts. I must tell you something. In 3 days, I leave on a diplomatic mission to a neutral station. The Council believes human-Draken relations need improvement. They have asked me to lead the effort because of my experience with you. David's stomach dropped. How long will you be gone? Months, perhaps. Maybe a year. She folded her wings and looked at him. You could come with me. Your knowledge of human culture would be valuable. I'm not a diplomat. Neither was I, until recently. She sat beside him again, close enough that her scales caught the moonlight. I'm asking because I do not want to be apart from you for that long. Is that selfish? No. David's voice was rough. I don't want that either. Then come with me. What about Mira? She will stay with my clan. She is surrounded by family now, David. She does not need you the way she did, but she will always have a place in your life if you choose to keep it. David was quiet for a long time. Finally, he asked the question that terrified him most. What are we, Ashira? I know Draken don't have human relationships. I know your culture is different, but I need to understand what this is. Ashira took his hand in her clawed one. The gesture was careful, gentle despite her strength. In my culture, we have bonds called heart companions. They are not like human romantic partners. They are deeper, rarer. A heart companion is someone whose purpose aligns with yours so completely that you become stronger together than apart. It is loyalty, respect, shared goals, and yes, affection. But it is also something more difficult to name. Is that what we are? I believe so. You freed my body from chains, but you also freed something else. You showed me that trust across species is possible, that differences can be bridged, that the universe contains more good than I had allowed myself to believe. Her eyes held his. You changed my heart, David, and I think I changed yours too. He could not argue with that. I was so tired of being alone, of expecting nothing from anyone. You made me want to try again. Then try. Come with me. Be my heart companion as I learn to navigate human space. Show me more of what your people can be. Let me show you that you deserve to belong somewhere. Before David could answer, alarms screamed across the city. Both of them jumped to their feet. In the distance, ships appeared in orbit. Dozens of them. Syndicate vessels. More than David had ever seen in one place. They ran to the council chambers. Gryver was already there, studying tactical displays. The syndicate has come in force, the elders said grimly. They demand we surrender you and the human. They claim we harbor criminals who destroyed their property and killed their people. How many ships? Ashira asked. 43, including 3 capital carriers. David's mind raced. They're here for revenge. For the command carrier we destroyed. They won't negotiate. Then we fight. Ashira's voice was steel. No. David stepped forward. This is my fault. The syndicate wants me. Let me turn myself in. End this before your people suffer. Absolutely not, Ashira and Gryver said simultaneously. David, Ashira grabbed his shoulders. You're a Skyfire clan now. We do not surrender our own. Ever. That is not our way. Gryver nodded. The syndicate threatens Draken Prime. This stopped being about you the moment they entered our space with weapons armed. They will learn what happens when they challenge us. But I'm the reason they're here. No. Gryver's scarred face was fierce. They're here because they're slavers and bullies who cannot accept that someone stood against them. You simply had the courage to do what needed doing. Now we will finish what you started. The battle lasted 6 hours. Draken fighters filled the sky, their pilots channeling thermal energy from the volcanic vents to power devastating attacks. David flew the Wanderer alongside them, using his knowledge of syndicate tactics to coordinate strike patterns. Ashira commanded a wing of heavy assault ships, her strategic mind turning the Draken's raw power into surgical precision. The syndicate had numbers, but the Draken had fury, skill, and something the slavers did not expect. They had David, whose understanding of syndicate command protocols let him predict enemy movements and exploit weaknesses. When a last syndicate ship jumped away, damaged and running, the Draken had lost only 4 vessels. The enemy fleet was shattered. 3 days later, David and Ashira stood at the landing platform. The Wanderer was loaded with supplies for their diplomatic mission. Mira hugged David tight. Come back soon, she whispered. I will. And when I do, maybe you can show me all the things you've learned. I'll be taller than you by then. David laughed. Probably true. Mira stepped back, and David saw she had tears in her eyes. But she was smiling. She had a home now, a family. She would be okay. Gryver approached with a wrapped package. For your journey, a Draken navigation crystal. Consider it a reminder that you always have a place to return to. Thank you. David accepted the gift with genuine gratitude. For everything. For taking a chance on a cynical human salvager. You were never just that. Gryver tapped his chest twice. You are clan now. Do not forget it. As the Wanderer lifted off, David looked at Ashira in the co-pilot's seat. She smiled at him, her golden eyes bright. Are you afraid? She asked. Terrified. I haven't shared my life with anyone in years. I don't know if I remember how. Then we learned together. She reached across and took his hand. That is what heart companions do. David looked out at the stars ahead, then back at Drake and Prime, shrinking behind them. For the first time in longer than he could remember, he was not running away from something. He was moving toward something, toward purpose, toward connection, toward a future he never thought possible, that he freed Ashira from sand chains in a crashed prison transport. But what she did after changed everything. She did not just accept his help. She showed him that being saved works both ways. That sometimes the person doing the rescuing needs rescuing too. That hearts can heal if you find someone willing to be patient while you learn to trust again. Ready for whatever comes next? Ashira asked. David squeezed her hand gently. Yeah, I think I am. The Wanderer jumped to hyperspace, carrying them toward new worlds, new challenges, and a future neither of them would face alone.